Welcome to Al Ginkgo, your virtual campfire talk with fellow eclectics, kindling knowledge synthesis.
Okay. All right then. Very good. Well, here we are then. Alhamdulillah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. May it please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to
Amin.
enjoin what it is that we're about to discuss.
Amin.
Alhamdulillah.
Go ahead, Umair.
All right.
What's on your mind? Go ahead. Let's see. Oh, wait. Let me just check with is this? Are we being recorded, darling? Okay. Yeah. All right. We're recording. There we go.
Alhamdulillah.
All right then. So proceed,
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
gentlemen. Tell me why you are interested in talking to me.
All right. Go ahead.
All right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Doctor, you have inspired a small group of college students, really. We are living in a secular world, and having heard your story from being a medical doctor to being off-grid and living in the mountains of Borneo, it was inspiring in helping us think we need to relieve our own situations, about tailoring our environment in a way that we could be more comfortable in practicing what we believe is the truth. And as you can believe, living in the West and specifically in a university environment, there are some barriers that will be in the way, as well as things being thrown at us. For example, and not limited to fitna. Free mixing is probably the biggest issue, and we really just wanted to have some insight on how can someone best living in this type of environment best be able to practice their faith without falling into the wrong hands.
Well, without falling into the wrong hands. There you go. Okay, very good. Now, that statement, you see, that qualifier there, the almost like a suffix to that thought, that indicates that, how shall I say it?
That we are already in the right path?
No, it indicates a certain disconnection, all right, with guidance, and the reason I'm saying that is because it's not really necessary to take too many extra steps in order to enter into the bubble of your own destiny, wherever it is that you are. Now, when I say that bubble, I'm talking about a sphere, okay? And let's just imagine your life force, the kun faya kun that has inscribed your soul with whatever it is that Allah has inscribed your soul with. This has a destiny, a purpose, you see. And that purpose, the bubble of that destiny, that life force, that kun faya kun, it can't belong to anyone else but you see. So now when people start asking questions like you've just asked, and I get this a lot especially from young people. Well, what can we do? What can we do? Where can we go? How can we? I don't have the answer specific, all right, for that, but I do have a specific answer, and I'm going to try and work this out for you right now with the help of Allah, so that you can walk away from this little talk that we're having right now with something really solid. You don't have
Inshallah.
Yeah,
Sure.
because Islam has been made irrelevant in practical terms, and this is what you're talking about. You
Mhm.
want a practical spirituality, okay? The same sort of thing that allows, for example, a Japanese person in Tokyo, where they've got probably the largest population in the world, and all that noise and all those distractions and all this worldliness and all this secularism, you see, they can walk down the street, have their little lunch break, eat some noodle soup, and pass a shrine on the way back to the office. Walk into that shrine, ring a little bell, you see, and their soul is perfectly aligned with their purpose for that day. You understand? That
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that they're being governed correctly. I'm talking about the individual bubble. Okay.
Mhm.
Are you getting what I mean now? Now
Yeah.
Completely.
the reason they do that is because they have indicated a certain degree of Zen discipline in their approach to the worship of God. And now they've got all kinds of different names for God. And there was a time in the Orient when there was only a monotheistic position. There wasn't all this pantheistic nonsense, but that's long gone now. So, but that doesn't mean the essence of destiny isn't there, you see, because
Mhm.
people get confused with ideas and then they start talking about the ideas and they forget all about the bubble that I'm talking about. This bubble belongs to you, it belongs to whoever uh, Allah joins you to, you see, in your life. And there is such a thing as being joined together for a specific purpose. The problem is people are looking at all these other arguments instead of seeing where it is that their bubble should settle into the positions like a beehive with the bubbles of other people on a similar path, you see. And now, if you are not in a place where that happens, that doesn't mean you're not going to be, you see. Doesn't mean you're not going to be. All
Mhm.
right. So what you have to do, and when you're in a place like that, you can't. There's no agglutination taking place between the next hexagon bubble and yours in the beehive. You see, it's just not there. But this concept of the beehive is Quranic. You see, it's in the Bible too. But the occult um, teachers, they have taken this and worked it. It's a true principle, but they worked it only for their purposes, which is selfishness, you see.
Selfish.
So, and because they worked it for selfishness like that, they have given Muslims the appearance of this beehive when in fact no real work is being produced. There's no real honey being produced. It's just a bunch of empty shells. You understand? They're not really settling one each to the other. There's always friction, you see, and there's all this constant repression of fitra, and you can't get to the point where you talk about it because God, by the time you've got enough courage to talk about it, you got to go do another ritual. this is this is not beehive business. This is not the business of becoming a human community, you see, that's fully human, that's fully meeting the needs of each other. The proof of that is in the pudding now. The Muslim peoples all over the world, they're leaving their own countries because their needs are not being met by their own governors, by their own authorities, who claim to be Muslims, who claim to be the ones who understand Islam, who made it relevant, when in fact you stand there, you're 21 years old, you want to get married, and you can't even, earn a
Exactly.
living, for
Exactly.
God's sake. What has your religion prepared you to do? Oh, you can recite the Quran, but you can't explain it. You can't make it relevant. You can't earn a living that's going to allow you to take a wife. No, what religion is this? That's not religion, you see, because Islam is a way of life. So they've made your bubbles of relevance irrelevant, and then they've put you in positions where you really can't find your destiny. And then everybody just says, okay, well, they're just bouncing off of each other and all this sectarian, you know, bullfighting is going on all the time. So they say, "Oh, my madhab is better than yours. My dad can beat your dad." You
Exactly.
know, this is all infantile. This is what do you call it? It's arrested development. You see, this is not maturity, and that's why young men like you turn around when you find some old fella like me who's been talking about it for years and nobody's listening, you see, especially the people that have the minbar. You see, they're not talking about these matters. So, what you're asking me is, what are we going to do about it? See, because you're between a rock and a hard place, or at least maybe somewhere psychologically that's kind of what it feels like, but you're not really there. You're actually in the place where of expansion and in a place of greater freedom, and because there's the greater you serve the truth of Allah's intention for us to become fully human, become fully conscious. To that same extent, you become free. You see, so the more you enslave yourself to your fully conscious becoming a servant of Allah, the more freedom you have. Now, some of the Sufis have turned that around, you know, and they've gone the other path with that. But that's not necessarily the case. You see, all statements that have anything to do with reality can be utilized for better or worse. It's kind of like a continuum. So I take it then you're in university positions, is that right?
Yep. Yeah.
You're students
That's right.
still, or you're on faculty, or what?
Oh no, we're students.
Mm-hmm.
We're still, educating ourselves in this environment that focuses on educating without involving religion, because that's
Uh-huh.
not the focus. That's
Yes.
not logical. That's
Mm-hmm.
not rational according to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But what I did want to ask was regarding it's more of like us trying to find out what the cause of today is, like what resulted in falsehood to be celebrated and the truth to be hidden. And I reflected upon one of your podcasts you did with the three Muslims, and you mentioned a story regarding men who are boys, because
Yes.
it was of
Mm-hmm.
a group of students who were in front of a television
Yeah.
watching the
Yes.
what
Yes.
do you call it,
Mm-hmm.
soap opera show, pleasing
Yes.
their
Yes.
woman, but
Mm-hmm.
in
Yes.
actuality the real thing, that the
Mm-hmm.
truth that you
Yes.
wanted to show them,
Yes.
that's what they wanted to hide away from.
Yeah, they didn't want the reality. This was when Egypt's president
Hmm.
Anwar Sadat was assassinated by the Muslim Brotherhood, and I was in the medical university at the time, and I was going through the student union when that happened, and I heard it on the news broadcast, and so I went right into the TV room, and I'd never seen this, and I'm fresh back from being overseas. You see, I had just come back from living 4 to 5 years in Europe, so I came back to America, and I felt like a stranger in my home country. You see, and that's a whole new topic for a lecture, but in any case, that's what happened, and I was amazed to see that. Why has this happened? Okay, I explained it in a series of essays that I've written and just recently published called Trust. It's a book called Trust. It's I wrote the book because, you see, Imran Hussein asked me the same question. How is this possible?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, he was on the phone with me at the time. And he said, how is this possible? He said, Doctor, I want you to answer that question. Can you write the white paper? You see. And I said, you want me to write it? He said, of course. He said, you're more than capable. So I said, okay, I'll do what I can. And so I wrote that paper, and I called it the subversion of reason. And this is why when reason is subverted, you think about that form, that word subverted, and you equalize it, just make it a synonym of inverted, you see, because if you're not serving Allah, you see, then you're serving yourself. And if you're serving yourself, you're serving the enemy of Allah's cause in you, which means you're not going to meet your destiny, you see. So this sort of thing that happens is what we want to try and prevent your generation and those of you who are coming out of it and those who follow you from falling into that same pit, you see, making the same errors that the ancestors have made, so to speak.
Yes.
And that's why you're asking the question. And so how do you do this? Well, you don't have to be a Sufi to do it. You don't have to be a Sunni. You don't have to be a Shia. You don't have to be any of those names or words. You just have to be yourself. And you have to turn your intention towards fulfilling your purpose, because that's the cause of Allah in your life. You see? Don't worry about fulfilling the purpose of the Muslim Brotherhood. No. You want to fulfill your own purpose. You see, I'm saying that because I want to bring you back to your bubble. You see? All right. Now, right now, we're three separate bubbles here, and Lord knows if circumstances were different and we were all in one place, maybe we could establish some sort of an institution. But that's neither here nor there. If we did do such a thing, then that would be our bubbles sort of coalescing in their fluid manners, so that we've sort of flowed through the purpose of this universe and this life like jellyfishes, all in schooling together, you see. And jellyfishes can do that, and you wouldn't think, right? It's like trees in the forest. They don't touch each other at the very top of the limbs. They swim back and forth. There's sort of an electromagnetic force, you see, that keeps them attracted but yet repulsed, you see, so that when they're moving, they don't touch each other and they don't conflict, but they complement, you see. So that's what individual bubbles should be doing. And because leadership has failed in all realms now, there's no cohesiveness at the communal level. So we're surrounded by strangers, we're governed by strangers, and we have to be held accountable to strangers who know nothing about us. And that's completely and totally un-Islamic, you see, because the Islamic system is based on the family. And the family is what evolves into tribes and into clans and into, clannish relationships, and then interclannish, and then international relationships, which is what we had in the Medina Charter. You see, that was kind of an international republic there, up there in North Arabia. You see, where he's talking, he set the example of the governance. He didn't take over the tribes, their tribal business. No, Muhammad didn't do that. it was a concord for mutual protection, you see. And the tribes were hoping that he would lessen the amount of intertribal bloodshed, you see. So, because they admitted him as the wisest amongst them and the most trustworthy, you see, that's what the Quran and what we can accept of the Hadith tell us about that. So that example is what he left us, but it's not what we inherited, you see. And so now we've got all these bubbles, and no one's schooling together like jellyfish or trees in the forest. No, that's not happening. It's not happening in the marriages. It's not happening at the family level. It can't happen at the communal level. It's just not happening. So what you're asking is, well, it's kind of like, how do we establish an Islamically oriented community wherever it is that we are? Okay, well, first of all, if that's what you really want to do, then you have to find out what goes beyond the common terminology of what people consider to be Islamic, you see. And I'm going to reduce that to you to one simple thought. Okay, I'm going to try. Okay, what's Islamic? Islamic, there's nothing more important than making peace, you see. That's what Islam is supposed to be about. But I'm not talking about, running out and waving white flags and stopping a skirmish or whatever the case might be, or getting in between Mike Tyson and whatever other girl is in there. No. I'm talking about maintaining intercommunal peace, intertribal peace. You see, we're getting back to the same bubble that we started off with Medina. You see. All those bubbles, those tribes, they said, okay, we're gonna work like this. Okay, then the Jews, they kind of pulled out, and you know the rest of the story. But that's what they were trying to do. Okay, and that's what you young people want. Of course, that's what we want. We all want that, but we're in a world where it's possible, but only if there's a hierarchy based on adab. And that's where we can appreciate the work of someone like Professor Alatas out of Malaysia, and his work on, look up the definition of adab according to Professor Alatas. I put it in a couple of my different books. This is the best approach, because you have to submit to a hierarchy, and there's a hierarchy. You see, but that hierarchy has to be based on truth. So it has to be based on justice. It can't be based on nepotism. It can't be based on my dad's better than your dad. No, it's got to be based on an objective opinion, which only the elders in the community can vote on. That's the example, you see, that the Prophet gave us with the Medina Charter. There was no democracy there. That's not democracy. There was no general vote, because then you equate your vote with all kinds of stupid people who have no idea what's going on. You see, that's not wisdom. Okay, and it's not the Greek way either, because the Greek way approach to democracy, where it's only governments, the only people who had the vote were mostly the men. Okay, and they had to be educated. They had to be responsible. And that's how it was also in the foundation of America when they started doing this system too. They tried it. In any case, what you want is this bubbling. Okay, so how do you do it? Okay, well, be aware, situational awareness. Okay, wherever it is that you are, you're going to find people who, and you can ask Allah to open up your eyes so that you can see more than you're presently seeing now, and He will. You'll begin to see things you didn't see or appreciate before. So and the reason I'm saying this, and I like the sort of jellyfish bubbles, sort of working together. I think it's a good analogy because that's what everyone wants. That's what we want in our families, our communities, and all that sort of thing, and we want it especially in our marriages. So that's why I use the picture. So Muslims have lost this capacity, and what you have to do is you have to look, well, what's the next best thing? Okay. If the ideal's way up here and all you got is something down here, you know you're going to have to make the best of that now, aren't you? Because it's a problem that wise leaders have all the time, and it's a trial of patience too, because you got to govern a bunch of stupid people, and they're not informed. So how are you going to get them to work together? Well, that's a principle of occult political science, and I kind of write a lot about that, and my book on trust explains it completely, how it is that they do it, in answer to this question that you asked before, and it has to do with the subversion of reason and the inversion. Okay, so the good becomes bad and bad becomes good. That's what's happened now, and it's a matter of thinking, because the mind can be conditioned over a long period of time to think that something represents the will of God, when in fact it doesn't. You see, not at all. And the proof and point is the star and crescent on top of every mosque. It's an idol from the ancient pagan worship years. It was one of those idols that was busted to pieces by Abraham, and also probably busted by the prophet and thrown out of the Kaaba, if that story is correct. But so anyway, we want these bubbles. You can't have them. So why am I saying this? Well, may Allah open your eyes to see who is working together like this. All right. Where are they? What people are they? All right. And then you start to, you swim around them. All right. Get to know them a little bit. See if there's a connection. All right. Because, now let me explain this to you, young man. There's a couple of things, more than a couple of things, that the Muhammad and Prophet Isa agreed on. And one of them has to do with the end times. Now, Jesus talked about the signs, and Muhammad talked about the signs of the end, or whatever we want to consider the end is. I'm not sure the end is the right word to describe what's taking place. But what they both agreed on was this. They said, get out of the cities, go live with the indigenous people.
Indigenous people.
Yeah. Why? Because they're the ones who know how to survive. And why do they know how to survive? Because they're closest to nature. And if they're closest to nature, they're closer to the book, the other book of Revelation, and that's creation itself. They can read the earth, they can read the air, they can read the animals, they can read the plants. All right. They know they can read the seasons. People in the city don't know anything about this. So he said, get out of the cities and go live with the Native Americans, or go live with the Bedouins, or go live with the Afghan, monsters up there in the hills. Look, they're the ones who can survive. What's the point here? Is the point about establishing a caliphate? No, it's about survival, isn't it, gentlemen? It's about survival. Okay, now let's take this principle a step further. It's about survival. Okay, here you want to go and transfer that connotation, which includes the hereafter, here and the hereafter, but it also includes completion, you see, because when you get to the hereafter, there's an element of completion there. We're entering this kind of foreverness, if you will, and that's a continuum. So um, when when you're going in that direction, you want you want things complete. So that's why I mentioned the concept, because you've got to complete it in one realm, but the other realm you want to complete is you want to complete your bubble's destiny. You want to complete that destiny. And even if you don't complete it, maybe you don't reach the place or the stream where you're going to go back and spawn again, whatever the case might be. But it doesn't matter. Once you know you're in the right stream, schooling with the right bubbles, hey, nothing matters. And it doesn't matter where you're with or what kind of hostile environments out there. What matters is that you're in the right place in the right with the right people doing the right thing at the right time. Okay, even if it means you're going to tie your ankles to each other so that you don't run away from the battle. Yeah, you remember that scene from The Lion in the Desert? Did you see that film? Yeah, you should see that film. Now you'll get an idea of what some real Muslims are like. All right. Yeah. They abandoned Libya. They abandoned Omar Mukhtar. That's why, you see, they were the real Muslims. Islam abandoned those men. They were the real Sufis, if you want to use that word. Omar Mukhtar and Sanusi, they were the ones making the last stand. They were the ones, not the Muslim Brotherhood. You see. So that was the last attempt of of the bubble trying to ascend into Islamic governments after that. Now, Gaddafi tried to resurrect that same spirit, but his own people, just like they betrayed him. You see, for gold. You see, for gold, for the black gold, whatever, for women, for blonde women, like this. Anyway, you got the idea. All right. So this you want. All right. So let me tell you now. What's my bubble doing? Okay. Well, I'm here in Kentucky, and I'm surrounded by a bunch of farmers. Okay, and they're all pretty much decent Christian farmers. And there's a group of Amish people here, several groups of them. So we're in the middle of I don't know, 500, 600, 700 square miles, maybe more, of just farmland. And we've got all these good Christian white folks. We've got all these Amish people around us. So if I wanted to find a defensible position for, and we're here in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. So we're up off the valley. So we've left the cities. All right, the closest cities are well over an hour drive from where we are. So I've got all these little Christian and, Protestant and Amish bubbles and all these old, farmers around here trying to do the best they can in their uninformed state. Well, hey, their bubbles are doing something and they're working together. They got a community. All right. They got leaders and they're decent. Their little towns are all clean. All right. There aren't any homeless on the streets, even in their larger cities. They're not there. So they got to be doing something right. Right? It may not be the same vibration. Maybe they're going a little bit slower than you'd like to go. But while they're doing whatever they're doing, you can bubble along right with them and they'll leave you in peace. You see, that's another sign of a confluent bubble. Someone that's going to help you rather than hinder you reach and attain your destiny. And your destiny is simply to become more human and become more useful, and no matter what your circumstance is. So that's another thing that people have forgotten to explain about this journey, because there's no monolith here. There's no, oh, I'm going to grow up and become a doctor and that's it. Hey, listen, I didn't know I was going to be a doctor, and I'm still a doctor, but it's kind of like being, well, I used to be president, but I'm not president anymore, you see. So, no, I'm retired from all that, but, and I've done, I have about, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 different hats I can put on. Okay. It depends on the job at hand. All right. I'm a little bit more limited now than I used to be when I was younger. But the point here, gentlemen, is this: don't get fixed on some idea of how it is that you think Allah wants you to do something. What Allah does is give you a direction, and He gives you the tools and the means to do this something. And that's about it. And you start off trying to, maybe you start off thinking you're just going to build a little canoe, and by the time you're finished, it's a bloody yacht. You understand what I'm saying? Don't fix your ideas. Just make sure you're on the right path, you're bubbling along, and you got someone close to you, especially, meaning as much as possible. You can't fulfill your deen without the beginning of the deen, which means your mate. You see? So the reason I bring this up is because, well, this is what you're looking for, but you can't do that without your wife. It won't happen. Because you see, doing it with your wife is the proof that you can do it at all. Because it's the most intimate of relationships. And it is the one that is closest to our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's nothing closer to that. There's nothing closer to that relationship than the intimacy in the marriage. That's why it's built into it. So if you can do this with your wife, you see, then you can take that out into the community where you find other people doing that. Now, if that means you're going to have a restricted community life, well, so be it. So be it. Stop trying to change other people and just concentrate on allowing yourself to change enough so that you grow and complete your destiny. You see, that's what it's about. And this destiny has everything to do about a purposeful relationship that enhances the community in which you are bubbling. Okay, so now you see, if you contemplate this analogy, gentlemen, I think you'll see that it's almost impossible to do this in any kind of traditional Muslim environment, because they're not bubbling people. You see, they don't bubble. Everything's fixed and rigid. It's a cube like the Kaaba. You see, now there's a reason for the term organic chemistry, and we can discuss that in a different lecture. But social chemistry is fluid. Okay, that's how it is. It's like a willow tree blowing, bending in the wind. You see, it's not fixed in cubicle. It's completely and totally unnatural. There are places for the cube in this whole thing, but not in the manner that people think. So this bubbling, this thing that you're looking for, can't be done in most of your um, traditional Muslim environments. And it's very, very difficult to deal with traditional people because of the subliminal anchors in their subconscious that causes reactionary. It makes them almost violent whenever certain topics, taboo topics, are brought up to conversation. So, where are you going to do this? And again, this brings us back to your question. Well, all right. So, why are you there in the university? Are you trying to find yourself, gentlemen? Well, I don't think so. I think both of you have a pretty good idea who each of you is already. What you're trying to find is, why am I here? What's this all about? All right. First of all, it's a journey. Okay, so and you guys are just starting out. All right, pretty much. This is you're what, in your 20s, right? 30s?
Yeah,
I
21. Yeah.
21. Okay, so you're just starting out. This is the first stage of your full adulthood. Okay, and maturity doesn't come until the age of 40 to 42. That's when a man's fully mature, and by then, your children should have been raised. Your first batch of children should have been raised. You see, so you're not married, you're not prepared for marriage, and so that means you come from a repressed traditional background. You're not prepared for life. You're prepared for understanding all sorts of abstract things, but you don't have any practical utilitarian skills. And you're wondering what the hell it's all about. How has Islam brought me to this point? Well, at least you're waking up
Mm-hmm.
to it, okay? And that's a beginning, because most people don't. You see, they get stuck in this traditional mode, whether they're Muslims or Buddhists or whatever the case might be, and they just simply stop thinking and they just follow, just do. And Islam, the Quran talks about that over and over and over again. It's a big error, okay, because it's a big mistake, because we're not using our noodles. We're not using our powers of reason. And so, all right, now, so you're where you are for whatever your individual reasons are, and you've got undefined goals, or maybe you do have a defined goal. But I have other people who ask me similar questions, and they always have some goals that they're trying to get done, or trying to find out what a goal is. And one of the things that happens is that they, excuse me, I just lost my train of thought. I was talking about goals, other people. Gosh, I got so many things. One of the things that happens is that people succumb to fear, and they have the idea of faith and believing in God, but they're waiting for God to do something rather than doing it themselves. And they've lost sight of the fact that, okay, well, if I've got to do something myself, hey, I'm not ready to do it. So if I have to do it, then I have to prepare myself to do it. And to prepare yourself to do something that needs to be done, that's called discipline and practice. So you can acquire the skill to do it. And so people cut themselves short because they don't want to do what's necessary to acquire the knowledge, to take the time, to take the to acquire the skills that will allow them to appropriate what the abilities that they need to get something done, rather than waiting for someone else to do it. Now, that's a kind of a messianic dependency. You're waiting for Mahdi, you're waiting for the hero. This is all hero worship, you see. We all admire the heroes, nothing wrong with that. And but that's not what I'm talking about here. Most people are not protean, they're not self-stimulated, and when you have a repressed background, you're not going to self-stimulate and then do what it takes to achieve one point at a time. And one point at a time, it's kind of like building a building you can't afford to build, so you just buy one brick, and or 50 bricks next week, or 500 bricks next season, whatever the case. And after 10 years, you've heard the stories like this. God, my dad built that house over 20 years, man. Hey, wow, that's really great. Yeah, he built it himself with his own hands. Okay, he did it himself. He didn't know how to build anything when he started. Okay, so you're in the process of learning how to build something. Okay, and a lot of people want to get ahead of the process. Well, don't think in terms of getting ahead of the process. Think in terms of paying attention to what the process is all about and what the purpose of a specific thing is. If you don't understand it and it's something that's on the agenda that you're woken up to, you're committed to doing that thing, do it and learn it to the best of your ability, because that moment you're integrating yourself into the situational awareness of the moment, and you're going to push yourself forward by just simply attracting the best of that thing, whatever it is that you got to do. When you attract the best of that thing by giving it your best, then everything that's in the best interest for your destiny will be attracted to you. It's a principle, you see, and that requires patience. It requires faithfulness, requires all these things that the Sufis are trying to get people to do, and saying, "Oh, it's going to bring you closer to God." Well, it does. It may bring you closer to God, but does it bring you closer to putting a wife in your bed or a rice in your bowl? You see, that's the challenge here on the earth. You see, because those are the responsibilities, especially of men. That woman's waiting for you to put her in your bed. She's waiting there someplace. And when you do that, you take on a responsibility, and that responsibility is the half of the human whole. All right, which is going to create that male female bubble. Okay, that is the dean in marriage, and that's half the dean. Okay, so you see, so that's the thing, that the Muslim imams, it seems to me, have lost sight of these ideas, or maybe they never knew them, they never taught them, they certainly don't teach them, to make Islam a bit more relevant. You see, it's better to prepare to put that woman in your bed and rice in her bowl as well as yours. That's your true religion, you see. Now, to do that in justice, that's the challenge, you see. To do that, that's the real challenge of Islam, you see, in the earth. Okay. And that's what we should be teaching young men. And that's also what we should be teaching the young women. Hey.
But now we run into the issue of us being expected to be ahead of the process before
Yes.
getting married.
Yes. No, that's right. And nobody's preparing you, you see. So that's why, that's one of the reasons I wrote my book, The Taqwa of Marriage. I think I'm going to try and redo that, maybe make it a little bit more readable. And in any case, yeah, this is really important. So I hope that answers some of the. I hope that helps to clear up some of the waters that you were looking at when you approached me with this question. Well, what can we do? How do we, you know, practice Islam and become a bubble, be aware of it, and find out who's bubbling. Look, I'm sending my wife's son, my stepson, to a private Baptist college. All right. Now, they like to teach Jesus all the time. These are hallelujah, Jesus, amen people. But my God, they've got a good school. And that school is forming children, young adults with character and ambition. And they're becoming informed and they're socially integrated, you see. So all of this is spiraling. And I don't care what they think of Jesus. It doesn't matter to me. And when the boy goes there and he's got to sit through the chapel, I says, you just learn how to sing those hymns and practice your voice. This sort of thing. And don't worry about the amen, Jesus people. Just get the best you can. You know, he wants to play tennis, his other things they want to do there. Look, find out who's doing this, who's creating the viable social communities that are living in harmony and peace, because this whole idea of peace, you see, that means peace with each other, right? But how can you do that if you don't have peace with yourself? And how can you have peace with yourself if you don't have peace with your creator? You see, so all of this is Tawheed. So this is why Isa, for example, in his one of his sermons, he said, "Blessed are those blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall see God." You see, now, do you think is this to be taken literally? No, 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 no. If Abraham is said to have walked with God, or if Adam was said to have walked with God, or if any of these other prophets was said to have walked with God, what does that mean? It means walking in the perfect will, where your will and Allah's will are one, united. Are united. That's what Isa said. You see, my will and the Father's will, the Creator's will, not the Father. They translate that, mistranslate it. My will and the Source Creator's will are united. They're one. All right. So you want to find out what God's will is for you. All right. What are your gifts? What are you created to do? What are your skills? How they should be developed? And those are the things you need to focus on. You need to focus on those things in order to prepare for your destiny, to meet your destiny. All right. Now, there are things that you do and along the way while you're meeting your destiny, but you see already, you've got some catching up to do. But hey, you're you're way ahead of folks like me. See, I didn't know any of these things until the last 20 years, and I'm 73 now. So you guys got a head start on me. Yeah, you should consider yourself lucky.
Alhamdulillah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, anything else you want to ask, or any observations you want to make?
I believe brother Umair had some questions as well.
Doctor, that sounded it was very inspiring. I am enlightened, but if there is a surrounding bubble that you have that is pulling you to their orbit, if you will. Like, for example,
Yeah.
if you have family obligations that are keeping you in a community that isn't exactly that flow that brings you to your greater purpose, then is this where you have to live two lives, or you have to branch out and break away from a bond that you are obligated for?
It depends. You see, you can't make a generic statement in responses. It depends on each circumstance. It's just like each marriage has to be looked at. If partners are coming to a certain position where they're talking about divorce, then counseling is probably in everybody's best interest, and maybe they're not going to do that. So you have to look at the circumstances. Maybe they're just a little bit too unhuman at the moment. And you got to pull them back into a more human pattern of behaving with each other. So it's the same with these sort of situations. Now, if you've got somebody in the family who's a drunk alcoholic who's just, swimming in sin, you cut them loose. I wouldn't have anything to do with them. But if you've got, if you got a problematic old aunt you got to take care of, and she's real stuck in the old ways, look, as long as she's not, that much of a burden to you, and you've got some obligation as far as the family's concerned to take care of, you just do the best you can. The problem that most of my students have had, and I try to persuade them, is look, don't try to talk to these people about whatever it is that you have learned different from their particular conventional belief system. You see, you just waste your time. Now, the philosophers figured this out a long time ago. You can't reason with an unreasonable person, and this is where ignorance leaves people. You see, it leaves them being unreasonable, because they grow old, and they won't change. An old dog, you can't teach them new tricks. They don't want to change. So if they are ignorant and they grow old ignorant, oh, you've got a political system that you really can't change. And if you're surrounded by a bunch of people like that, but they're leaving you in peace, well, that's okay. And there are some situations where you have to decide, okay, well, what's the pecking order here? Okay, who are you submitting to in this situation? And where are you in this situation? Okay, I have one student who has a wealthy family circumstance, and I advised him. I said, "Look, you're not independent yet. You're in this situation, and you have an obligation to your parents, and you have an obligation to this inheritance." Yeah. I mean, if you're in a situation where you're going to inherit something, then Allah's going to give you wealth. Well, wealth should serve a purpose. And if you're put in that position, you need to prepare for it. You see, it'd be like running away from a responsibility. You see, so I had to put him back in the position and say, yeah, well, yeah, he's woken up and he's revisionist, and he wants to, sort of get involved in retranslating the Quran and get a better tafsir and all this sort of thing. And I said, that's wonderful. His parents have no idea about any of this stuff. I said, just leave them alone in peace. His father's old. He's had 2 strokes. He still goes out and works in the field. Okay. I said, you go help your dad when you're not in medical school. Okay. Because he hasn't finished his schooling yet either, you see. And so that means he's not standing on his own 2 feet, is he? He's not his own man yet. All right. Who's paying your rent? Who's paying your bills? This sort of thing. So let's get reality oriented here and see, okay, well, that's what I mean by the pecking order. Okay. And it's a pecking order. No matter where you go, it doesn't matter where you go in the world. You've got a political authority, and then you've got a kind of mafia authority on the street. And if you become anybody of any substance in any community someplace, you're going to have to wind up paying taxes to both, one way or the other. We all know that's the truth. Okay, so if that's the truth in the Muslim countries, well, gosh, they got it wrong, isn't it? Something's wrong, and they're running away. So, if that's where you are, you see, look at the pecking order in your own life. You see, who are you responsible to? What are your obligations? And what obligations are worthy of your attention? What other obligations have been thrown on you, all right, that you really didn't accept voluntarily? Okay. And what are your obligations? Because sometimes people go through life thinking they have an obligation when in fact they don't. They don't have that obligation, you see. So if you want the freedom to become Allah's slave, don't enslave yourself to those who are going to bring you down to slavehood, to the dunya, so to speak, slavery to materialism, because you can't rise above that slavery. They'll never let you rise above that. Okay. So, yeah, I have students who complained about, arguing with their parents all the time. I said, stop. What's the matter with you? Just go get their groceries and cook them a nice meal and be nice to them. Don't argue about any of this stuff. It's not worth it. All right. They brought you up. They brought you into the world. They took care of you. You are who you are largely because of them. So you pay your respect to them. As long as you're not Idi Amin feeding people to the crocodiles, you're obligated to pay your respects to them. But if there are other people that are having influences which are pulling you away from your destiny and into borderline situations where you're always rubbing shoulders with people who are doing the wrong things, all right, all the time. You got to get those people out of your life, all right? And some of them you might think you're obligated to support when in fact they're not. Sometimes people disqualify themselves, all right? And this is not unusual. The scripture talks about this all the time. It's about the children of Abraham was supposed to inherit the promise. No, it's conditional. You only inherit this promise and this grace that's going to get you to meet your destiny consciously if you are meeting the conditions. And the conditions are that you are doing what Allah wants you to do, not what a bunch of old guys who lived 1,200 years ago who thought they were doing the right thing, but misguided. That's not, you're supposed to be doing the right thing, not what God wants you to do, not what they want you to do. That's a whole different business. And that's the business of political science, you see, using religion to get the masses to do what you want them to do. All right. Whenever the masses are doing that, a political parade marching down the street with coffins on your shoulder, proving that you're going to get into heaven, you see, that's not bubbling, man. that's not bubbling, okay? No, that's not the Rahim grace that you're looking for. I know it's not. I've met other smaller groups of people who have nothing to do with Islam who have this. They're working just fine together. You find out where they are, look at how they have become successful, look at their history, look at their relationships. And these are the people that you probably should be living close to, if not having something to do. Now, let me just say one more thing. While you're at university, You've got to live for completing your purpose there. Don't get involved in anything else that's not going to help you complete your purpose and reach the goal. You know, this education that you're getting is, don't think of it as being all that important. Matter of fact, there are a lot of people saying you don't need to go university anymore. Depends on what your purpose is, you see, now. So complete your purpose there. Complete it. It's a bus ticket. Okay? It's a bus ticket. That's what it is. I learned more about medicine after I got my bus ticket.
A really expensive bus ticket.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get what you mean.
Okay. The thing the things that you want to do, the things that will give you the fulfillment, the things that will complete your purpose, this teleology of the kun faya kun that's in your heart, this comes after you get the bus ticket. Now, does this have to be? Well, it has to be because that's where the system is, where you are, and that's what you're involved in. This is the social system that you're involved in. So, and you're evolving in it. So that means you. Somebody once asked me, "Well, what should I do? I'm a politically oriented person, and I've just had an epiphany. And now I want to be a better Muslim." And I said, "Should I resign?" I said, "Wait." So I had a big long talk with him, and I said, "Look. If you're in that kind of position, then you're in a position of power and authority to use the resources that are most beneficial for your community." I said, "That's why you're there. So just go and do it, right? Until you can't anymore." It's real simple. So, and that's pretty much the rule wherever it is that you are. So while you're there in the university, you'll get your bus ticket, all right? And that's your whole purpose. Don't get involved in political parties or don't get involved in revisionist movements and all this sort of thing. No, you don't need any other campaign than, what it is that's going to get you your bachelor's, your master's, or your PhD, whatever it is you're working on, okay? That knowledge is most important. And it's not important that you retain the knowledge. What's important is that you retain where it is that knowledge is kept. Okay. There are certain things that you need to practice your profession, which is fundamental. That comes with practice, and it just becomes part of your entire neural mechanism. But there are other things that you really don't need to know, but you need to know where they are. And you need to know who knows that stuff. Okay. So while you're there preparing to receive your diploma, you find out what's the essential knowledge. And if you don't know what it is, and none of your professors can tell you, ask God. Allah will tell you one way or the other. I'm telling you, Allah does. He'll let you know. He'll let one way or another, he'll let you know that's essential, that's non-essential. And once you get on the essential track, and you'd begin cataloging and differentiating between essential and non-essential, then you're making your whole self, your whole approach to whatever it is you're doing more economic. You see, so one of the things that when I used to work in the emergency room, the specialists and the nurses were, especially when they saw me come on duty, they were very happy to see me because they knew I wasn't going to cause them to do anything that was unnecessary. I wasn't going to order 50 tests, because somebody came in with a sore throat or whatever. So I didn't do anything that was not necessary. And I always knew what my limitations were. So when I called the specialists, you see, the specialist said, "Oh, who's this?" And I gave my name. He said, "Oh, okay, what is it?" They listened to me right away, because they knew whenever I called them, it was important. And so you have to know what your limitations are, and you have to know where to go for the knowledge that's outside your circle. That's why you're there. And you're also there to observe that society. Because the society in the military or at the university level, this is showing you how the entire society is constructed. Because the people that are at the university level, these are usually the top 20% of the intelligentsia in the country. All right. And so if you learn how they think and react to certain situations, then it just adds to your book of wisdom in the years to come, you see. So you're there to observe that instead of observing pygmies in the desert. Okay. Allah has a different reason for each of us to do different things amongst different peoples in different places in different times. And so on all of that, when we're doing it, we're reaching our destiny and we're doing God's will. And so that makes us Muslim. You see, that's what makes us Muslim. And we're doing it peacefully. Okay. That means you go tonight, you go to bed at night, knowing that you've done your best that day, doing the things with the people that Allah wants you to do at the right time, in the right place. You see, with the right people, and that brings peaceful sleep, man. That's Islam. That's it. That's it. Anything else, gentlemen?
Alhamdulillah. I believe I should be good, but if Brother Umair has any questions.
Just one last thing from me, inshallah. That would be regarding how would if we have the opportunity to at least learn how we can adapt to a new society where we could bubble with, and it is considered off grid, where we will have to know a little about agriculture, raising cattle and whatnot. What advice would you say is best for us to get into it, at least?
And how were your experiences when you got to it?
Well, the thing is, you got to learn from the people who know how to do it.
Yeah.
Okay? So if you don't know, then you learn from the people who know how to do it. That's apprenticeship. That's the old way, the old approach to education. You find someone who knows how to do it, and then you follow them, and you attach yourself to them, and you learn what you can. So, is this some sort of a new Islamic village community or enterprise or something?
There is a brother with a ranch, and he has a trouble finding people who can help him raise his cattle mainly. But yeah, he is Muslim, and he does prefer having Muslim people working with him.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's okay. Is he within striking distance of you? I mean, how far is he from where you are?
Yeah, he's 40 minutes to an hour.
Okay. Well.
Yeah.
So your idea is to get involved with him while you're doing your university studies. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. And if you got involved with him, what would you do?
First off, I would mainly be following people who know what to do. He doesn't have very many infrastructures either, so I'll learn a bit of construction for sure to help maintain wells and build cabins and whatnot.
There you go.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, if that's what you're going to do, this is good. This is something that's good and practical and needs to be done. The thing that I would say when I say go and learn from people who know how to do it, most Muslims I know don't know how to do these things. So don't limit yourself and to just learning from so-called Muslims. Learn from anyone who bubbles in that discipline.
Right.
You find the first person. You find a person who's got the best approach, the best technique, the best knowledge, and you learn from them. you see, and then you incorporate that in your own bubble, whatever the case might be. So, whatever you do, all right. Now, when I was a medical student, I had to do something similar in order to keep myself sane. So I learned an alternative system of medicine called homeopathic medicine while I was in medical school, you see. And so I taught myself the homeopathic medicine, and that
This
helped
was
me
in
to
Germany,
stay
right?
balanced. Yeah, yeah, Germany and South Dakota. I started learning about it in Germany, and I continued. So if you're going to do something like this, this will help you to maintain your sanity, especially if you're going to work in the earth. Okay, you're going to do any digging or farming or any working with animals. Do it because this will help you to maintain your sanity. It will help you maintain your health, and you will learn all kinds of stuff that probably you need to know to carry you into the future. Because this is people talk about these things, but actually doing it is a lot of work. You see, and people don't um, want to do the hard work. They want someone else to come and do the hard work, and then they want to take credit for it later. You see, so
Right.
um, I don't put up with people. I've had some Muslims come here and pretend to be workers, and then I had to cast them out because they were liars and hypocrites, lazy lazy SOBs, if you want to know what I mean. Anyway, yeah, I think that's a good idea, but don't go beyond your reach. Don't overreach. In other words, just do whatever it is that you can do, and don't overcommit yourself to anything that you can't do. Remember, if you're at the university, that's your primary goal, because that's a bus ticket you got to have if you're going to move up any kind of a ladder here. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can
Yes.
hear you.
Okay, well, all right then. Anything else, gentlemen?
And I also have. I just was also seeking advice for someone going into medical school. This is on the
Yes.
side
Hmm.
as well,
Hmm.
because my bus ticket is quite the long one. So, just curious on what
Hmm.
advice you have for medical students, students pursuing medicine, if that's the right
Yes.
thing.
Hmm. Are you asking me if they should
Yes, especially in the U.S.
in the U.S.? It's expensive,
Yeah.
and it's quite demeaning in certain situations. I
Hmm.
mean, I wouldn't want to do it again if I had to do it all
Okay.
over again. Yeah. And it's a long path from start to
Mm-hmm.
finish. It depends on what discipline you enter into. Could take 10 years or more, including undergrad, graduate work, and your postgraduate work. So that's a long path. So
Mm-hmm.
you've really got to be committed to doing it.
Yes.
And you've really got to, you either have to have the finances or you're going to have to find them.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about finding them is that if you have to borrow money and go into debt, it's difficult. I was fortunate because I was able to use the GI Bill, and that paid most of my expenses when I
Mm-hmm.
went back to school and became a doctor. I was very fortunate. So um, that was something I had never. I just want to give you an example. It never occurred to me that I would use the GI Bill and go back to school. Just never occurred to me. It never occurred to me that I would become a doctor.
Subhanallah.
Okay,
Subhanallah.
when I was a young man at your age, and I entered the army at the age of 26. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and it just never occurred to me that I would do that and I would become a doctor.
Subhanallah.
So this is what I mean by, when you make a decision and you're going to do something, and
Mm-hmm.
so you then do it, you give it your very best. And if you're doing that thing, and even if you're having trouble doing that thing, if you're giving it your very best, there's always some benefit to be found in that thing.
Yeah.
Afterwards, you find it, and that's what happened to me. You see, I had
Alhamdulillah.
a So I use the GI Bill to do that. So as far as your friend's concerned, they've got to consider that financial aspect because it's a big bill today. I don't know what the schools are costing. So if they don't have the wherewithal, the finances to do it, I wouldn't bother. Because if you're going to go into debt, you're going to wind up with a couple of $1 million debt by the time they're finished. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's going to be at least 8 years, you see, before they can get any money back by earning. You see, so they're going to have to live on borrowed money for 8 years. And the way they got this REBA system going up, that's just doubles and triples itself. And these schools are very expensive, so I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend learning traditional Chinese acupuncture, naturopathic medicine, homeopathic medicine, even Indian Ayurveda. I think if you invest yourself in those fields and then learn a bit more about the up and coming field of energy medicine, they're calling it now. This has to do with the manipulation of electromagnetic fields. Then a person going into that field, into medicine, I would recommend that they do that because as an alternative. If they take the allopathic school, they're going to be frustrated. They might be brilliant, okay? They might be brilliant. Look, I'll tell you my own experience. My IQ was pushing something on 150, something like that, 145 to 50. Last time, that was years and years ago. I never paid it any mind. But when I was undergraduate, I got almost 4.0 right across the board. And this was as an elder student. And I was scared to go back to school. Well, I guess I was just not scared enough, and I did well. But when I got into medical school, I lived for one equation: C equals MD. Okay. That's the equation. And that was the epitome of physics for me. That equation right there. I didn't care anymore about getting A's. I just wanted to get through. All right. Now, I used to have nightmares, and in the nightmare, I was in one of these old operating theaters, one of these old circular operating theaters from the 19th century hospitals, usually, and with the tiers of where students could sit and look down at the operating table. So I would be in the center at the operating table, and all these people dressed in white coats would be there pointing their finger at me. And I was having this nightmare every night.
That's crazy.
And this was during my first year as a medical student. And so I went to the psychologist who was assigned. His name was Doug Soule. Soule, and he told me to write a poem. He said, the little boy in me, he said, you're not going to be able to get through this unless you lay him in his grave, because the little boy, the idealistic boy that's in you chasing butterflies, he's not going to make it. He's not going to graduate. He won't make it through this. So you have to kill him. So what I did is I wrote a eulogy, and I promised to resurrect him with a kiss when I finished. And you see, then the nightmare went away. You see, because the idealism that young men is in our soul. It's part of Fitra. We all want this ideal world. We want an ideal Islam. And we want an ideal community. It's possible, but you're never going to have a community that doesn't have problems. But when you have a community that's repressing truth and it's not living on fully informed information, then you've got a bit of a problem. See, and you can't make the advances that the evolutionary process demands of us, so that we become fully and truly human. You see, so that's the challenge. And in medical school, uh, there's nothing ideal. They break all the rules. They break all the rules about how it is to best educate somebody, and they publish the scientific papers on how to do it, and then they break all the rules in doing it. You see, so this sort of thing, and if you're going to get through, it's any discipline is going to be difficult, but medical discipline is more difficult because when you're in this field and in this day and age, you're denying the topic of the uh, of the discipline, which is the interconnection, the
Mm-hmm.
interconnectedness of the human soul with the human body. Hey, that's what medicine's all about. And if you don't entertain the metaphysical, spiritual aspects of that, you're, and that's what's in your heart. It's very, very difficult, you see, to carry that on to completion, you see, without having some sort of serious conflict. Now, some people can do it. So the person who's considering to do this, they got these practical things to consider.
Consider.
See, I considered the practicalness when I decided to go to medical school. I said, "Can I get in?" Chances were 50% where I was, so that's pretty good. It's one and two. Can I afford it? Yes, with the help of the GI Bill. Yes, I could. Was I qualified? Yes, I was. So I went for it. Everything was okay. It was okay. So your student friend has got to think about this. Now,
Mm-hmm.
some kids come into the world and they know from a young age what they're going to be when they grow up. They already
Yeah.
know it, you know. And if your friend is one of these students, they've known since the age of 6.5 that they were going to be a doctor. Hey, I, you know, they might as well just go for it because even if they fail, they'll be satisfied. At least they tried. You
Yeah.
see, so you got to let them go for it. Um, any case, I hope that's helpful, gentlemen.
That was really helpful. Thank you very much, Dr. Zaid.
You're welcome. Anything else?
I believe that will be all the questions for today. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair. That was very insightful and enlightening. Doctor, there is one last thing, however.
Yes.
Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed me to, inshallah, see Hajj this year. I'm in Saudi
Mhm.
Arabia right now.
Yes.
Alhamdulillah.
And when I will be performing Hajj, I would like to make dua for everyone that was once a part of my life and even give me some insight. So if there's anything specifically that you would like me to ask the one that will inshallah grant whatever you wish,
Okay.
please do let me know.
Look, if you make it, are you planning to go to Medina?
After Eid, yes.
Okay. So if you go to Medina and you visit the Prophet's grave, just thank him for me.
Allah. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Okay. That's all. Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate that. All right.
Jazakallah khair. That sounds wonderful.
Assalamu alaikum.
All right then. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, gentlemen. Until next time, inshallah.
Until next time, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, doctor.